The oldest stories were never written. They were whispered. From one lonely fire to the next, some were forgotten. Others were hidden for a reason. Tonight's tale is one of those. Welcome to Tooth and Talon. I call this one The Long Night.
The fire crackled softly as the last traces of daylight disappeared behind the mountains. Noah leaned back against an old pine log, one hand wrapped around a dented tin mug, while 3 tired grandchildren sat scattered around the campfire. One rubbed sore feet and groaned. "Grandpa, whose idea was it to hike all day?" Another laughed. "Yours." "It was worth it," the youngest protested. "The view was awesome." "The view was awesome," the oldest muttered. "My legs disagree." Noah chuckled into his mug. "You think today was hard?" 3 pairs of curious eyes turned toward him. "When I was not much older than all of you, I got myself lost in these very mountains." "You?" the youngest asked, surprised. "You got lost? But you know everything, Papaw." "Oh, I got lost," Noah said as he chuckled. "I was headstrong and thought I knew it all." "What happened?" Noah stared into the dancing flames for a long moment. The smile slowly faded from his face. "I can tell you about the most terrifying and most extraordinary night of my life." The children leaned closer. For years, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. He reached beside the log and rested a weathered hand on an old leather box. Its surface was cracked with age, its brass corners dulled from countless years of careful handling. "I've only ever told this story a handful of times." His thumb traced the worn leather. "It began with a bear." The fire popped. The mountains fell silent, and Noah began. Bo sat alone atop a granite outcropping overlooking the valley below. The mountains stretched endlessly before him, their dark silhouettes rising against a sky still scattered with stars. A cool breeze wandered through the pines, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and spruce. Somewhere far below, a creek murmured its endless journey through the forest. He breathed deeply. The air was clean, peaceful. His weathered leather backpack rested against the stone beside him. An equally worn leather box sat carefully strapped to its side, its edges softened by time and use. Handled
letters
so often,
left to answer.
it had become less an object and more a habit. He looked east. The first faint hint of grey had begun to separate the mountains from the night. Not long now. For the first time in centuries, there was nowhere left to go. No one left to visit, no debts of memory still waiting to be paid. No reason left to postpone what had been delayed for far too long. He closed his eyes and listened. Wind through the trees, water rushing over stone, an owl calling somewhere in the darkness. He had almost forgotten how the world sounded when one was no longer running from what they had done, or from what they had become in order to survive it. Centuries of movement, of names borrowed and discarded, of watching faces age and vanish while his own remained unchanged. All of it had finally settled into something quiet, something final. A faint smile touched his lips, not of joy, but of recognition, of acceptance. "It is enough," he whispered. Not because the world had been kind, but because he no longer needed it to be, because there was nothing left in him that asked for more. Then, somewhere deep in the forest, someone screamed. Bo remained still for only a heartbeat. His eyes drifted toward the sound. Another scream, closer this time, desperate. He closed his eyes and let out a slow breath that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than exhaustion. Something older, heavier, worn down by repetition rather than time. So be it. The words were quiet, not resigned so much as accepted, like a task he had long since stopped arguing with. He slipped the worn leather box into his backpack and pulled the straps over his shoulders. His hands lingered a fraction too long on the buckles, as if even the act of fastening them had become something he no longer had the energy to rush. Every movement was practiced, deliberate, shaped by necessity rather than intention. There was no urgency in him, only inevitability. Perhaps he had done this 1,000 times before, perhaps more. With one final glance toward the brightening eastern sky, he turned his back on it. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. His boots crunched softly across the granite before disappearing beneath the towering pines. The forest swallowed him whole. He moved without hurry. He never did anymore. Branches brushed harmlessly against his shoulders. Moss-covered stones and fallen timber that would have slowed another traveler seemed to lose their meaning in his path, as though the world had long ago stopped expecting him to be delayed by it. His feet found the earth with quiet certainty, not because he was swift, but because he was familiar with every way it could try to stop him. Again, the scream. This time it was closer, too close, followed by the violent crash of something enormous tearing through the underbrush. A bear. Beau's expression did not change. It rarely did anymore. Not because he did not feel, but because feeling, at this point, was no longer useful in the moment. He altered his course slightly and continued forward. A frightened bird exploded from the canopy overhead. The mountain had become very quiet. Even the insects had fallen silent. Only the pounding footfalls remained. Closer. Beau exhaled through his nose, slow and controlled, as if conserving something far more precious than breath. Then, a young man burst through the trees, stumbling down the slope. His face was streaked with sweat and dirt, his chest heaving as panic drove him onward. He looked like someone who had been running long after his body had stopped agreeing with the decision. He risked one terrified glance over his shoulder. The roar that answered froze the blood in his veins. He turned back and nearly collided with the man standing silently in his path. The young man skidded to a stop, nearly losing his footing on the loose rock. "What are you doing?" he gasped. "Run!" Beau did not react. He simply looked past him, as if the warning had never been spoken. The mountain answered with another deafening roar. It wasn't just sound, it was pressure. It rolled through the trees like a physical wave, rattling branches, shaking loose needles and dust that drifted down like ash. Somewhere ahead, wood cracked violently, loud, wet snaps of living trunks giving way. Then came the footsteps. Not fast, not frantic, heavy, deliberate. Each impact sinking into the earth like a hammer strike, closer now, closer still, until the forest itself seemed to recoil from whatever was coming through it. The young man's breathing turned sharp, ragged. "Did you hear me? We have to go, now!" Beau finally spoke. "How long has it been following you?" "What?" the young man snapped, incredulous. "I don't know, 5, maybe 10 minutes. Beau gave a small, thoughtful nod, as if the answer confirmed something he had already suspected. "So," he paused, still watching the tree line. "It is only doing what bears do." The young man stared at him like he had lost his mind. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Beau said evenly, "that it is behaving as expected. You are in its territory. It is protecting it." The words had barely settled when the forest broke. Not parted, erupted. A massive grizzly detonated through the tree line, tearing through saplings like they were grass. Branches whipped and snapped against its body, but it did not slow. It came through the woods like a living landslide, fur bristling with rain and debris, eyes locked forward with a cold, ancient focus. It hit the edge of the clearing and slid into view, claws carving deep gouges into stone and soil as it fought for purchase. The ground seemed to dip under its weight. Its head lowered slowly, deliberately, as if measuring them, as if deciding. Wet fur clung to its massive frame, and when it exhaled, the sound was low and grinding, almost like the earth itself was growling back. Its lips peeled back, yellowed teeth, long, curved, broken at the edges, caught the dim light. The forest went utterly still. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. The young man stumbled back a step, then another. His hands shook so badly he couldn't clench them. But Bo did not move, not a single step, not a flinch, not even a shift in posture. His gaze remained steady on the bear, as if they were the only two things in the world that mattered. Quietly, almost gently, he spoke. "You've made your point, my friend." A pause. "Go home. Let's avoid this. It will only end in unnecessary pain for both of us." The bear answered with a violent roar that ripped through the clearing, snapping branches overhead and sending birds exploding from the canopy in blind panic. The young man finally broke. "Are you crazy, dude?" he shouted, voice cracking. "That thing is going to kill us!" The grizzly charged. The ground seemed to shake beneath its weight. "No!" the young man shouted. Bo never moved. 20 feet, 15, 10. Only then did he step. The bear's massive paw swept through the space where Bo had been standing an instant before. Claws as long as daggers swept through empty air. Bo pivoted, driving his shoulder into the animal's neck. The impact echoed through the trees. Neither yielded. The grizzly wheeled with frightening speed, roaring as it rose onto its hind legs. Towering over Bo, it came down with both forelegs. This time the claws found flesh. The sound of tearing fabric was followed immediately by tear in skin. Deep crimson lines opened across Bo's chest and shoulder. The young man stared in horror. "Oh my God!" Bo grunted from the force but never cried out. Instead, he drove both hands beneath the bear's shoulders and met its weight head-on. For one impossible moment, man and bear simply strained against one another, muscle against muscle, will against instinct. The grizzly snarled inches from Bo's face. Hot breath washed over him as jaws snapped shut with enough force to splinter bone had they found their mark. Bo leaned closer. "Easy." The bear shoved again. Bo slid backward several feet through the pine needles before planting his feet. "Enough!" Bo exclaimed. The bear roared. With a powerful twist, Bo redirected its momentum. Both crashed down the rocky slope in an explosion of dirt, loose stone, and broken brush. The young man stood frozen. "What the actual—" Silence. Only the rustling of leaves drifted up from below. Then, a low growl. Another, heavy breathing. "Easy, my friend." A long pause. "You've made your point. Go home. I'd rather neither of us to get more injured today." Several agonizing seconds passed. Then Bo climbed back up the slope. His shirt hung in shredded strips across one shoulder. Blood ran freely down his arm, dripping from his fingertips onto the stone. He looked as though he'd just walked away from a train wreck. Behind him, the grizzly slowly emerged from the brush. It stopped. Its dark eyes met Bo's. For several long seconds, neither moved. Finally, the bear let out one last irritated huff, turned, and disappeared into the timber. Bo watched until it was gone. "Safe travels, my friend." He brushed dirt from his sleeve as though nothing particularly unusual had happened. The young man could only stare. What?" His eyes drifted to the long claw marks across Bo's chest. Blood still covered them, but they were changing. Right before his eyes, the edges of each wound slowly drew together. The bleeding lessened. Torn flesh knit itself closed, as though guided by invisible hands. The young man's mouth fell open. "No!" Bo glanced down at the wounds, as if noticing them for the first time. "Well," he said with a faint sigh, "that could have gone better." The young man looked from the retreating bear, back to the man standing before him. "Who are you?" Bo bent down and picked up his backpack, brushing the last of the dirt from it before slipping it over one shoulder. He checked the leather box strapped securely to its side. Satisfied, he turned to leave. "Wait!" Bo stopped but didn't turn around. The young man swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry, his pulse still hammering like it hadn't caught up to reality. "Who are you?" For a long moment, only the wind answered. The silence stretched so long it started to feel wrong, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Finally, Bo spoke. "Someone who is running out of time." He started walking. The young man blinked, frozen for half a second too long. "That's it?" Bo didn't answer. "Hey!" The young man's voice cracked slightly as he hurried after him, boots slipping on loose stone. No, you can't just say something like that and then walk away. You..." He gestured wildly back toward the trees, his hands shaking more than he realized. "I just watched you wrestle a grizzly bear." "It was less wrestling," Bo said without slowing his pace, "and more mutual disagreement." The young man stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "It tried to kill you." "It tried to persuade me to leave. It preferred dinner alone. That's your version of events?" "You are joking." "A little." "It ripped your chest open, dude." "I noticed." "I watched your chest." His voice caught, and he pointed again, more frantic now. It closed. It healed. That's not something people do." He stopped walking for a second, breathing hard, as if saying it out loud might make it make sense. It didn't. Bo sighed quietly. "Yes." The young man's head snapped up. "Yes, what?" "Yes," Bo replied again calmly. A beat of stunned silence. Then the young man actually laughed once, sharp, disbelieving, almost panicked. "That's not an answer. That's just you repeating words like that makes it normal." "It was to your previous question." "No, it wasn't." "It was." The young man dragged both hands down his face, fingers pressing into his eyes like he could physically reset his brain. "This is insane," he muttered. "This is actually insane. I'm either hallucinating or I don't even know what you are." Bo continued down the trail as though they were discussing weather patterns. After several moments, he spoke again. "You should keep moving," Bo said. The young man looked up sharply. "What?" "The bear may decide I was wrong." For a second, the words didn't register. Then they did. And the young man's stomach dropped so hard it felt like it left his body. His eyes went wide, breath catching in a tight, disbelieving gasp. "You're kidding." Bo glanced over his shoulder. "I sincerely hope so." That did not help. At all. Without another word, Bo continued down the mountain. The young man stood there for half a heartbeat longer, staring into the trees like he expected them to suddenly move. Then he turned and hurried after him. "I'm serious." His voice rose a little. "I'm not doing the whole mysterious forest guy disappears and I get eaten thing." "So am I." "No." He pointed at Bo, then immediately dropped his hand like it felt stupid. "I'm coming with you." Bo stopped walking. For the first time since they'd met, he looked directly into the young man's eyes. "You should not." "I shouldn't?" "No," Bo replied. "Why?" The question came out faster than he meant it to, edged with something closer to panic than curiosity. Bo's gaze drifted briefly toward the eastern sky before returning to him. "Because I am running out of time." "The sunrise?" the young man asked, too quickly, like he was trying to anchor the conversation to something normal. Bo simply looked at him. "Yes." The young man frowned, but his eyes kept scanning Bo's face like he was trying to find the joke. "I don't get it." "I know," Bo said. Another awkward silence settled between them. The young man shifted his weight, suddenly restless, like standing still was worse than moving. He rubbed the back of his neck, then his arms, then shoved his hands into his pockets and pulled them back out again. "Well, I still don't know how to get off this mountain." "You came up the trail. Go back down the trail," Bo offered. "I got chased off the trail by a bear." "That does complicate matters some." The young man stared at him for a second before letting out a short, strained laugh that didn't fully land. "I can't tell if you're messing with me." "I rarely do," Bo said. "Seriously?" "It causes misunderstandings," Bo added. The young man exhaled hard through his nose, then dragged both hands down his face. "This is insane." "It has been an unusual morning," Bo said. "You think?" The young man's voice cracked slightly on the last word. Bo resumed walking. After a few hurried steps, the young man caught up again, a little too close this time, like distance itself felt unsafe. "So," Bo sighed almost imperceptibly. "My name's Noah." Bo nodded once. "It is good to meet you, Noah." "That's it?" Noah asked. Bo thought for a moment and simply said, "Yes." "So," Noah said cautiously, voice lower now, tighter. "Do you have a name?" Bo was quiet for several strides. The young man's nerves stretched thinner with every second of silence. "Bodoc." "Bo what?" "Just call me Bo." "Just Bo? That's it?" A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "It has been for a very long time." The young man exhaled shakily, like he'd been holding his breath without realizing it. "That's not comforting," he muttered under his breath. The young man hurried after him. "Hey!" Bo didn't slow. "Hey!" "What?" Bo asked without turning. The young man caught up beside him, still breathing harder than normal, his eyes darting back toward the trees like the bear might reappear at any second. "So," he pointed back toward where they'd come, voice a little too sharp. "That just happened." "It did." "You wrestled a grizzly bear." "I disagreed with one." The young man exhaled hard through his nose, then dragged a hand down his face. "This is insane." Bo continued walking. After a few hurried steps, the young man caught up again. "So," Bo sighed almost imperceptibly. Noah opened his mouth to ask another question, then hesitated, eyes flicking again toward the trees. Bo raised a finger. "You may ask," he said. "You knew I was going to," Noah said quickly, almost accusingly, like he needed the answer to be wrong. "I did," Bo replied. Noah let out a short, uneasy laugh and shook his head. "Okay, first question." Bo kept walking. "How did you know I was going to ask a question?" Bo was silent for several steps. Noah filled the silence immediately, too fast. "Because that's not normal, right? That's not a normal thing people just—" "Because everyone does," Bo exclaimed. "Okay, like, dude." Noah's voice spiked, cracking with nerves as he gestured vaguely at Bo, then the forest, then nothing in particular. "That was intense. Are you like a government experiment or something?" Bo didn't answer immediately, but softly chuckled. His boots continued along the trail, the steady rhythm somehow more reassuring than the silence. Noah waited. "Was that a stupid question?" "Not the strangest I've been asked," Bo said. "So, that's not a no?" Noah asked. "It was an answer," Bo said with a smirk. "It was a terrible answer. I have found those are often the safest kind," Bo added. Noah stared at him for a moment before letting out a disbelieving laugh. "You're going to make me work for every answer, aren't you?" Bo considered it. "Probably." "You know, most people would just say no," Noah quipped. "Most people have less complicated lives," Bo retorted. Noah barked a laugh. "Okay, fair." He glanced sideways at Bo. "So, military?" "Once," Bo said. "Army?" Noah asked. "No," Bo responded. "Marines?" Bo looked ahead for a long moment. "No, I'm not from America," he said. Noah blinked. "Huh." A few more steps passed. "You know," Noah said, "that somehow raises more questions than it answers." "It often does," Bo exclaimed. Noah laughed. I mean, he shrugged. You wrestled a bear. Americans don't do that. No? Bo asked. No, we run or shoot them. Noah chuckled. A faint smile tugged at the corner of Bo's mouth. A sensible policy. Despite himself, Noah laughed. It surprised him. 5 minutes ago, he had been certain he was about to die. Now he was walking through the forest, making jokes with the strangest man he'd ever met. He wasn't sure which felt more unbelievable. They walked in silence for several minutes. The trail narrowed, forcing Noah to step over an old fallen pine. Bo spoke without looking back. What brought you up here? Noah shrugged. Hiking, he said. Alone? Bo asked. Yeah, Noah replied. Why? Noah kicked a loose stone off the trail. I don't know. Bo waited. Noah sighed. Guess I needed to get away for a while. From? Bo asked. Noah laughed once. You always ask questions with one word. When one is enough. Another few steps passed. My dad. Bo glanced at him. You do not get along? No, Noah said quickly. We do. He's a good dad. But? Bo asked, looking at Noah. Noah smiled to himself. He thinks I don't think. Bo nodded once, then asked, Do you? What? Noah asked. Think, Bo said. Noah frowned. Of course I do. Bo's expression never changed. I meant before you act, Bo added. Noah opened his mouth, closed it again. Okay, he admitted. That was fair. For the first time that morning, Bo smiled. They walked for several more minutes, the only sounds the crunch of boots beneath them and the wind moving softly through the pines. Noah finally broke the silence. My dad drives me nuts. Bo glanced at him, not surprised, just present. How so? He worries about everything, Noah said while exhaling. Bo didn't respond right away. He let the words sit there, like he was giving them room to be honest. Noah sighed, a little sharper than he meant it to be. I told him I was coming up here this weekend. And? Bo asked. Noah thought for a moment, then said, He wanted me to bring a GPS, bear spray, extra food, a first aid kit. Noah rolled his eyes, but there was more fatigue in it than humor. He even told me to text him every few hours. Bo listened without interrupting, his expression steady, unreadable in a way that didn't feel cold, just distant, like he was looking at something far away that Noah couldn't see. I mean, I'm 20. I'm not a kid anymore, Noah stated. No, Bo agreed quietly, as if he accepted the fact without argument. I'm an adult, Noah added. Bo gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. So why does he still treat me like I'm 12? Noah asked aloud. The trail leveled for a short stretch, and the space between them felt wider than the path. Bo's answer came quietly, carefully. Because to him, he looked ahead into the trees, not quite meeting Noah's eyes. You always will be. Noah frowned, frustration softening into confusion. I don't get it. I know, Bo said, and there was something in it that sounded less like dismissal and more like understanding that didn't translate easily into words. Another silence settled between them, heavier this time. Finally, Bo spoke again. There will come a day when your father can no longer worry about you. Noah looked over at him, searching his face for something clearer, something easier. I promise you. Bo's voice stayed even, but it had shifted, lower, quieter, as if he was speaking from somewhere further back than the present. When that day comes, there will be moments when you would give anything. He paused, and the pause lingered longer than the words before it. To hear him tell you to pack extra food one more time. Noah didn't answer. He couldn't find anything that fit. I know it feels like he doubts you, Bo added after a moment, almost gently correcting the assumption. Bo shook his head once. He does not. A beat. He fears losing you. Bo said. Noah looked down at the trail, suddenly less interested in proving anything. I never thought about it like that. Few sons do, Bo said, not as judgment but as something closer to resignation. They walked another several yards before Bo added, quieter now, almost as if the thought slipped out before he could stop it. Be thankful he is still here. Noah glanced at him. The words hadn't sounded like advice. They had sounded like memory. The trail wound through a stand of towering pines before Noah spoke again. Can I ask you something? Noah asked. You have demonstrated that you can, Bo replied. Noah rolled his eyes. You know what I mean. I do, Bo said with a chuckle. He took a slow breath. Why did you help me? Bo didn't answer immediately. He stepped over a fallen branch before speaking. Because you needed help. No, Noah shook his head. I mean, why? Bo looked at him. I have already answered. You don't even know me. No, Bo said. You could have just stayed where you were. I could have, Bo replied. You almost died. Bo considered that. Not particularly. You know what I mean, Noah shot back. I do, Bo said. Noah frowned. So why? Bo was quiet for several more steps. Finally, he said, long ago. His eyes stayed on the path ahead. Someone helped me. Noah waited. Bo didn't elaborate. That's it? Noah asked. That is enough, Bo stated. It doesn't explain anything, Noah quipped. It explains everything, Bo replied. Noah exhaled sharply. I don't get it. I know, Bo said again. Silence settled between them again. Then Bo spoke once more. We do not help people because they deserve it. Noah glanced at him. We help them because someone once helped us. Bo's voice softened, almost to himself. And if that chain ever breaks, he looked ahead. We all fall alone. They continued along the creek in silence. Noah wasn't sure what to say anymore. Every answer Bo gave seemed to create 3 new questions. And worse, he was starting to notice he didn't mind that. Finally, he cleared his throat. So, Noah said. Bo glanced over. So? With a smirk, Noah asked, You always this depressing? For the first time since they'd met, Bo laughed. It wasn't loud, just a quiet breath of amusement. But it came a fraction too easily, like he'd been waiting for permission. No. Noah smiled. Could have fooled me. I've been told I am excellent company, Bo exclaimed. You've been lied to, Noah said flatly. I suspected as much. Bo's eyes lingered on him a moment longer than necessary, as if weighing whether that was meant as an insult or an invitation. Noah chuckled. There he is. Bo looked over. Who? The normal guy, Noah said. Bo raised an eyebrow. I was unaware there had been another. You know what I mean, Noah said. I generally do. That earned a short pause between them, comfortable but not empty, like both were noticing the same space and choosing not to fill it too quickly. They walked a little farther. Noah shook his head. You've got jokes. A few, Bo replied. I didn't think you smiled. I try not to overdo it, Bo exclaimed. Why? It encourages conversation, Bo replied, smiling. Noah laughed. I knew it. What? Bo asked. You actually have a personality, Noah said as he chuckled. I've been accused of that before. Bo sighed, then smiled. After several brief moments of silence, Noah asked, So why were you up here? Bo thought for a second, then responded in an almost weary voice. Because I was tired. Noah made an odd gesture with his face before repeating Bo's words. Because you was tired? Yes, Bo responded flatly. Again, not understanding, he asked another question. So you were just like resting? Bo reached up to rub his brow with his fingers like one would when nursing a headache. I mean simply, am tired. Were you resting when I ran into you? Noah asked. This made Bo almost laugh out loud, but remembering how naive Noah is, he contained himself but instead just cleared his throat, then said, I am tired. I had not planned on coming back. Finally, Noah understood. Like, wait a sec, you were... Bo simply said, yes. Shocked, Noah bellowed out in a whine. Why? Bo simply said again, because I'm tired. I'm tired of existing. For nothing. Stunned, Noah couldn't wrap his head around this. Almost in anger, he shot back, Are you really serious right now? You're tired! Bo simply said, yes. Unbelievably annoyed, Noah shot back on a rant. So like, you can kick a bear's ass, you heal like some kind of superhero, you could do anything that you want. But you're tired? Bo did not respond. He just simply looked to the east. Noah's legs felt weak. He felt sick. In a defeated voice, he said, I'd give anything to be like you, and I don't even know you. Oh, would you? Bo quickly asked in a sarcastic yet gentle manner. Bo said it lightly, but his gaze flicked toward Noah again, quick, assessing, like he was still deciding how much of himself to leave visible. Noah noticed, and didn't look away right away. Noah frowned. I still don't understand. Bo held his gaze for a long moment. No? Bo responded. A tired smile flickered across his face, there, then gone. Bo added, I suppose you wouldn't. His eyes drifted back to the trail. His pace slowed slightly, as if the words themselves had weight. Imagine, his voice dropped, careful now, meeting someone who changes your life. They walked on. The forest seemed to narrow around them. Noah's brow stayed furrowed, eyes fixed on Bo's profile, searching for something, anything, that would make it make sense. You laugh together, work together, grow old beside one another. Bo's fingers flexed once at his side, then stilled. He let the silence stretch before continuing. Then one day, they're gone. Noah said nothing. His throat tightened as he swallowed. You grieve. Bo kept walking, but his gaze had gone distant, past the trees, past the moment. Eventually, the pain becomes bearable. A slow breath left him, measured, controlled. Years pass. You meet someone else who makes the world feel less empty. Something softened in his expression. And you begin again. The creek murmured beside them, indifferent, steady. Then you lose them too. Noah's eyes locked on him now, unblinking. Time after time. A few steps. Each one different. Each one the same in the end. Bo's voice never rose, never broke, but his posture tightened, subtle as a locked hinge. Friends go first. Silence. Then those who feel like family, even if they never were. Another step. His jaw flexed once, then eased. Sometimes it's a child who should have had more time than they were given. Noah's expression shifted, confusion thinning into something heavier, unsettled. Whole generations pass through your hands like water. The forest felt suddenly still. You start recognizing the moment just before age takes them. Bo stopped. Noah nearly did too, catching himself a half step behind. You learn not to become too attached. Bo's eyes stayed forward, but his focus had drifted somewhere far beyond the trees. It never works. Silence pressed in, thick enough that Noah became aware of his own breathing. At some point, Bo's voice dropped to something almost lost in the air. You stop asking how much more you can carry. A slow breath lifted his shoulders, then released them. He turned his head. You simply wonder how much longer you're meant to. Noah searched his face. The confusion was still there, but now it had fractured, something quieter slipping in beneath it. Unease. Recognition of a shape he couldn't name. That, he swallowed, that's impossible. A faint smile returned to Bo's face, softer now, almost regretful. Yes, as it should be. They walked a little farther beneath the whispering pines. When Bo spoke again, his voice was quieter still. Now imagine the countless wars, lives taken. His gaze remained fixed on the trail ahead, each one looking back at you during your quietest moments. He let the silence linger, then, almost too softly to hear, and the lives taken to live. Neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the creak slipping over stone and the steady crunch of boots against damp earth. Noah stared at the trail, but he wasn't seeing it. His mind kept trying to fit the man beside him into something familiar. Veteran, maybe. Special forces? Probably. A man who had seen too much? Definitely. But none of it fit. Not really. He thought back to the bear, the speed, the strength, the calm. Then to the words Bo had just spoken. Whole generations pass through your hands like water. Centuries. Noah stopped walking. Who are you, really? Bo slowed. For a long moment he simply stood there, listening to the wind move through the pines. When he finally answered, his voice carried neither pride nor mystery. I have spent a very long time asking myself the same question. Noah blinked. That's not an answer. No, Bo replied. Bo looked at him. It is merely the only honest one I have. Silence settled between them once more. Noah opened his mouth, closed it. Then, quietly, I'm sorry. Bo tilted his head. For what? Noah shrugged helplessly. I don't know. His eyes drifted toward the shredded remains of Bo's shirt. He shook his head. I don't think anyone should have to carry all that alone. A faint smile touched Bo's lips. I didn't. His gaze drifted toward the morning light now reaching the tops of the towering pines. The ones I carried it for have all turned to dust. Silence settled between them once more. For the first time in longer than he cared to remember, Bo wasn't certain. He looked back at Noah, the hint of a smile still lingering. The forest had gone silent, not the calm hush of evening settling in. This was different. No insects, no frogs. Even the wind seemed unwilling to move through the trees. Bo stood very still, head slightly tilted, as if listening to something Noah could not hear. His eyes didn't track the forest the way a man's would. They fixed, unblinking, on a point far beyond the trees. Lower your voice. A few seconds later, a muffled gunshot reached them. Bo's posture changed. Not quickly, not like surprise, like recognition. He turned to Noah. Stay here. Noah, confused. What? Noah started, but Bo was already moving. And then, he was gone. Not running, not even stepping through the brush in any normal sense. One moment he was there, the next, the space he had occupied felt empty in a way Noah couldn't explain, as if the forest itself had forgotten he was ever standing there. Quietly predatory, almost detached, never angry. Bo dropped into a crouch beside a fresh boot print pressed into damp earth. 3 men, heavy packs, one limping, another in expensive boots unsuited for the wild. The third, the leader, moved with certainty. Bo picked up a brass cartridge, rolled it between his fingers, and slipped it into his pocket. For a moment he didn't move. He was listening again, but not to the forest, to something beneath it. Then he stood. And as he did, something subtle but wrong passed through him. His shoulders loosened in a way that wasn't relaxation. It was restraint, being released. He vanished into the pale morning light without sound, without disturbance, as if the forest had simply decided not to acknowledge his passage. 100 yards ahead, voices carried through the trees. Poachers. One word, door tightened. At first, it looked like anger, but it wasn't. It was something older, something that had been waiting. Behind them, something moved between the trees. Not quickly, not cautiously, patiently, as if it had already decided the outcome and was simply waiting for the correct moment to arrive. The first man vanished. One moment he stood there. The next, his presence was simply removed. "Rick?" No answer. "Rick!" Flashlights swept the trees. Nothing. No tracks, no blood, no struggle. Only the rifle. A branch snapped. Rifles swung. Nothing. Then, a breath behind them. Not a growl, not even animal. Just air moving where it shouldn't. Too slow, too deliberate. As if something enormous was choosing not to rush. "Who's there?" The eyes blinked, and in that blink, the shape behind them seemed to shift, like it had been pretending to be part of the forest and briefly forgot to continue. Gone. "I saw someone." "You saw a deer." "No, that was a man." A scream tore through the forest, brief, sharp, immediately cut off. The leader ran. Branches whipped his face as panic finally broke through whatever confidence he had left. He burst into a clearing and stopped. The two bodies of his former friend laid there, piled atop the elk they had killed just moments ago. And sitting on top of the pile, calmly waiting, was Bo. The poacher dropped his flashlight and just stood there, stunned, looking at Bo and the pile of bodies. "Who are you?" the poacher asked. "What are you?" "A consequence," Bo responded. The single word with absolute certainty, almost like a verdict. The words didn't feel spoken, it felt delivered. The shot echoed. Birds erupted from the trees. For a moment, Bo was still visible in the smoke. Then, he wasn't. Noah heard it from half a mile away. He ran. Branches tore at his arms. His heartbeat drowned everything else. He stumbled into the clearing. Blood, gunpowder, death. 3 bodies. "Bo?" No answer. Then he saw him. Bo knelt beside one of the poachers, head bowed, breathing slow and steady. But now it was obvious the rhythm wasn't exhaustion. It was control. Like something inside him was being carefully kept in place. Blood stained his hands and lips. Noah stopped. Every warning, every story, every whispered tale of nightmares, all of it suddenly felt insufficient. A twig snapped under Noah's foot. Bo lifted his head, and for the first time, Noah understood what had been wrong in the forest all along. Bo's eyes met his. For a moment, Noah could no longer recognize the man he'd traveled with. The eyes looking back at him burned like coals beneath the trees. His smile. No, not a smile. Something had bared its teeth. Recognition. The tales in crappy B horror films was in front of him. Then Bo's expression softened. Not hunger, not anger. Sorrow, held behind something vast and tightly controlled, like a storm seen through glass. He looked down once more, as if checking that whatever he was had finished what it came to do. Then he stood. He wiped his hands and mouth with his sleeve. He unstrapped a small leather and wooden box from his backpack and walked toward Noah. He stopped and held it out. Almost fatherly, every trace of the monster is gone. It's time for me to go, but perhaps my journey is not quite over. Bo stood still, eyes fixed on the pale shafts of morning light breaking through the pines. The shadows were thinning. "I must leave." Noah blinked. "Leave?" Bo didn't look at him. He nodded toward the creeping light on the forest floor. "I prefer not to greet the morning." Only then did Noah notice it. How Bo had never once stepped beyond the cover of the trees, always just out of reach of the sun. A cold unease settled in his chest. Bo extended the small wooden box. Noah took it. It was lighter than it should have been. "What is it?" Bo held it for a moment longer than necessary. Something almost like regret flickered across his face. My story. A pause, then a quiet correction. No. His eyes met Noah's. History. Noah looked down at the box. The wood felt different. Not carved, not made, kept. Like it had been waiting longer than it had any right to. He swallowed. Will I see you again? Bo turned slightly toward the east. The light had reached the edge of the trees. It was close now. Too close. A faint smile touched his mouth. We shall see. He stepped back. One step. Then another. Then the shadows swallowed him faster than they should have been able to. Noah leaned forward instinctively. Bo! But the space where he had been was already empty. No sound, no movement, no trace. Just absence. Noah stood frozen, the box pressed hard against his chest, as if it might anchor him to something real. The forest felt suddenly larger, colder. A raven called somewhere far off. Noah didn't move. Not for a long time. Then, finally, he turned and began walking home, without looking back because he was afraid there would be nothing left to see. The fire cracked softly. For a long moment, no one spoke. The children sat motionless, eyes fixed on their grandfather. Even the youngest had forgotten the marshmallow dangling from the end of his stick. Old Noah smiled faintly. Not because the memory was pleasant, because it was still so very clear. His weathered hands rested upon a small wooden box worn smooth by time. He slowly brushed his thumb across its lid. So, one of the grandchildren finally whispered. What happened next? Noah's eyes remained on the box. I went home. A quiet chuckle escaped him, though I couldn't rightly tell you how. The children leaned closer. Were you scared? Noah looked into the fire. I'd never been more afraid in my life. A pause. And, his smile returned, never more wrong about someone. The children exchanged confused glances. One finally asked the question they'd all been holding. Did you ever see him again? Noah looked down at the box resting in his lap. His fingers lingered on the worn wood. Oh, he said softly. Many times. He lifted his gaze to meet theirs. And every one of them changed the course of history. The fire popped loudly, sending a shower of sparks twisting into the night sky. Noah rested both hands on the lid. I suppose, his thumb settled over the worn latch. It's time you finally learned why. The old brass latch clicked open, and they peered inside. Off in the distance, a figure leaned against a tree. When he heard the brass click of the box, he smiled, then disappeared into the darkness.